The room smelled of melting tallow and confrontation. Marguerite Severin pressed her back against a locked study door, while a man she had trusted held a document that could ruin her. Across Vienna, in a mansion she had not yet entered, a candle she had placed 3 weeks ago still burned in a window that had known nothing but darkness for 50 years. But that comes later. 6 weeks earlier, everything had been a matter of arithmetic. Marguerite Severin owned a bookshop on the Graben, not a lending library, not a charitable enterprise, a proper commercial establishment. She sold rare botanical texts, illustrated folios, medicinal herbals. At 32, she had managed the shop for 9 years, since inheriting it from her late husband, along with enough capital to survive without charity. She also possessed a gift she did not fully understand. Her hands could coax any plant to health. Dried roses bloomed again under her touch. Poisoned soil sweetened when she turned it. She attributed this to patience and study. Others whispered different explanations. On the first Tuesday of October, 1867, she arrived at her shop to find the lock broken. The door hung open like mid-sentence. Inside, Herr Caspar Drechsler waited. He sat in her reading chair, her ledger open on his knees. Drechsler was her landlord's solicitor, a man shaped like an exclamation mark, all sharp angles and dramatic emphasis. "Your lease expires in 41 days, Frau Severin," he said. He did not look up from the ledger. "My lease expires in April," she said. "I count rather well. It comes from selling things with prices attached." He turned a page. "Your landlord, Baron Engelmann, has sold this building. The new owner does not wish to renew commercial leases. You have 41 days to vacate." The floor beneath her feet felt suddenly theoretical. This shop was her livelihood. Her home was above it. Her reputation was built into its shelves. "The sale has not been recorded with the district registrar," she said. She knew this because she checked such things quarterly. "Who is the buyer?" Drechsler smiled. It was the kind of smile that had corners but no warmth. "That is confidential. But I assure you the paperwork is in order." "Then you will not mind showing me the executed contract," she said, "since you have already helped yourself to my ledger, my chair, and my lock." He closed the book. "You are a shopkeeper, Frau Severin, not a solicitor. I advise you to begin packing." "I advise you to leave before I summon the district constable for trespass," she said. She held the door open. Her hand did not shake. She counted the brass buttons on his coat. 7. She always counted things when anger threatened to replace thought. Drechsler left, but he left the ledger open to the page showing her quarterly earnings, as if to remind her how much she stood to lose. That evening, Marguerite walked to the district registrar's office and confirmed what she suspected. No sale had been recorded. The building's ownership remained with Baron Engelmann, who had been traveling in Italy for months. Someone was manipulating the paperwork. But why target a botanical bookshop on the Graben? The answer arrived 3 nights later, wearing a face she had not seen in 11 years. She was locking the shop at 7:30. The October air carried the metallic bite of early frost. A carriage stopped in the street. The door opened and a man stepped down into the gaslight with the careful precision of someone negotiating an old truce with gravity. He was tall. His hair was the color of ink that had dried in sunlight, dark with an improbable warmth at the edges. His skin was pale beyond fashion, beyond illness, beyond explanation. And his eyes, when they met hers, held the particular stillness of deep water. "Marguerite," he said. She had last heard that voice in a library in Salzburg. She had been 21. She had not known what he was then. She knew only that he had spent 3 evenings discussing Linnaean taxonomy with her and then vanished without farewell. "Lord Anselm Valdric," she said, "you look precisely the same." "You do not," he said. It was not an insult. He said it the way one might observe that a sketch had become a painting. A woman passing on the pavement slowed to stare. A nobleman speaking to a shopkeeper in the open street was a small scandal in itself. "I need your help," he said. "You needed to say goodbye 11 years ago," she said. "We do not always get what we need. Good evening, Lord Valdric." She turned the key. He did not move. The gaslight flickered and his shadow seemed to arrive a half-second late, as if it had forgotten its cue. Something is killing my garden, he said. Marguerite paused. She was a woman who could resist flattery, charm, wealth, and social pressure. But a dying garden was a different matter entirely. What kind of garden? She asked, not turning around. A walled garden. Roses, primarily. They were planted in 1793. They have survived revolution, siege, and neglect. Now they are blackening from the roots. I have consulted every horticulturist in Austria, and none could help. None could even identify the blight. She turned, 14 buttons on his coat. She counted them without meaning to. My shop is under threat of seizure by a solicitor named Dressler, she said. I have neither the time nor the inclination for charity work. I'm not asking for charity, he said. I will pay your full consulting fee, and I may know something about Herr Dressler. The frost bit at her fingers. She tucked them into her sleeves. What do you know? That he does not work for Baron Engelmann. He works for someone who wants what grows beneath your shop. Before she could respond, a voice cut across the street. Lord Valdrick, what an unexpected pleasure. Dressler emerged from the shadows of a doorway. His smile had acquired additional corners since their last meeting. I was not aware you had business on the Graben. I was not aware you conducted yours by breaking locks, Anselm said. His tone carried the particular frost of a man accustomed to owning the buildings other men broke into. Dressler's gaze moved between them. Calculation flickered behind his eyes like an abacus at work. Frau Severin, I see you have found a patron. How resourceful, but patronage does not extend leases. Neither does fraud, Marguerite said. 12, that is the number of district regulations you violated by entering my premises without notice. I counted. Dressler stiffened. He had not expected numbers. Men who dealt in intimidation rarely prepared for arithmetic. 41 days, he said, and walked into the dark. Marguerite watched him go. Then she looked at Anselm Valdrick, who had not moved, who stood in the gaslight like a monument to questions she had never been able to answer. Show me the garden, she said. His carriage took them through streets that narrowed as they climbed. The mansion sat on the edge of the Josefstadt district, a building of limestone and silence. Every window was dark, every curtain drawn, except one. On the second floor, a window stood bare, completely dark, empty, as if light itself had been forbidden entry. That room, she said, pointing. Why is it different? He did not look up. It has not been lit in 50 years. Why? Because the last person who lit it did not come back. He said nothing more. He led her through a gate into the walled garden, and the smell hit her like a sentence with no verb. Something was present but incomplete. The roses still had form. They still had thorns. But they were the gray-black of old iron. Their leaves crumbled at a touch. Marguerite knelt. She pressed her palm to the soil. It was cold. Not autumn cold, but absence cold, as if warmth had been extracted rather than simply lost. Something was drawing life from this ground. How long? She asked. The decline began 3 months ago. It has accelerated. She stood and brushed the dead soil from her fingers. This is not a blight. Something beneath the soil is consuming it. A root system, perhaps. Or she stopped. Beneath her palm, when she had touched the earth, she had felt something pulse. Not a heartbeat, more like a breath, like something sleeping that had stirred when it sensed her gift. I will need to return in daylight, she said. His expression did not change, but something behind it shifted. I am not available during daylight hours. Then give me a key. He hesitated. The hesitation lasted exactly long enough for her to understand it was significant. I will have one made, he said. She negotiated the terms that night in his drawing room. The room was beautiful and airless, filled with furniture that had outlived everyone who had chosen it. She named her fee, twice her usual rate, because the roses were unusual and because he had vanished from Salzburg without a word. Agreed, he said without negotiation. And you will tell me what you know about Dressler. He works for a woman named Countess Renata Vogt. She collects rare botanical specimens, living ones. She has learned that the soil beneath your shop contains a mineral deposit with unusual properties. Your plants thrive because of it. She wants the building demolished to access the deposit. My shop sits on a valuable soil, Marguerite said. She would have laughed if the implications were not so dire. And this countess is willing to commit fraud to obtain it. The countess is willing to do far more than that. Do you know her personally? Another hesitation. We have met. She is not someone who accepts refusal. Marguerite studied him. 11 years had passed. He had not aged a single day. She had noticed this on the street and chosen not to remark upon it because she was a woman who gathered facts before drawing conclusions. 5 buttons on your left cuff, she said. 6 on my right. Your tailor is either incompetent or you dressed in the dark. He looked down at his sleeves. A sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh, but the architecture of one. She returned the next morning with her tools. The key he had promised was waiting in an envelope at her shop, along with a note in handwriting so precise it might have been engraved. You may access any room except the second floor east chamber. Naturally, the second floor east chamber was the dark window. She spent the morning in the garden. The soil was worse than she had thought. The draining force extended deep, far deeper than any natural root system. Her gift stirred when she touched the ground, and the soil responded. Where her hands pressed, color returned. A single rose uncurled, pink as a whispered secret. But the moment she withdrew, the gray crept back. Whatever was draining this garden was stronger than she was, unless she could find its source. That afternoon, Dressler arrived at her shop with 2 men from the Municipal Building Commission. He presented papers declaring the building structurally unsound. An inspection was demanded within 72 hours. If the building failed, and inspections could be made to fail, she would be evicted on safety grounds. 23, Marguerite said, examining the papers. That is the number of signatures required for a structural condemnation. You have 19. Shall I show the commissioners which 4 are missing, or would you prefer they discover it themselves? Dressler's nostrils flared. The commissioners exchanged glances. The inspection will proceed regardless, Dressler said. Countess Vogt has friends on the municipal board. Then Countess Vogt should know that I have copies of every correspondence between her office and yours, including the one dated September 14th in which you discuss, and I quote, persuading the shopkeeper to vacate by any expedient means. My solicitor has the originals. This was a bluff. She had no copies. But Dressler did not know that. His face performed a complicated negotiation between fury and fear. You are making a powerful enemy, Frau Severin, he said. I already have one. I am simply making sure she knows I count. He left. The commissioners lingered, embarrassed, then departed with apologies. Marguerite sat behind her counter and let her hands shake. They had been waiting patiently to do so. That evening, she returned to Anselm's mansion. She found him in the garden, though the sun had only just set. He stood among the dying roses with an expression she recognized. The look of someone watching something they loved become something they could not save. The draining force is not natural, she told him. It is being directed. Someone is channeling it deliberately. Who? I do not know yet, but I need to understand the soil. This mineral deposit beneath my shop. Is it connected to your garden? He was quiet. The silence had texture, like velvet left too long in a closed room. Yes, he said. The same vein runs beneath both properties. It is called selenite vitae. It sustains certain forms of life that ordinary soil cannot. Certain forms of life, she repeated, such as roses planted in 1793 that should have died decades ago. Yes, such as a man who has not aged in 11 years. He looked at her. The garden was very still. Even the wind seemed to be listening. I wondered when you would say it, he said. I have been saying it silently since the Graben, but I preferred to state facts aloud. You are not human, Lord Valdric. You have not been human for a very long time. No, he said, I have not. And these roses, they survive because the selenite vitae sustains your nature, and your nature sustains them. They were planted by someone I loved. The garden is what remains of her. When the selenite is drained, the roses die, and eventually so do I. The confession hung between them. She did not flinch. She had read enough old herbals to know that the world contained more categories of life than polite society acknowledged. Then Countess Vogt is not merely trying to steal soil, Marguerite said. She is trying to destroy your source of sustenance. The Countess is one of my kind, he said. She has been trying to control the selenite vein for 30 years. If she controls it, she controls every vampire in Vienna who depends upon it. How many is that? 9. Marguerite counted. 9 lives dependent on the mineral in the soil, one countess attempting to seize it, one solicitor committing fraud, one bookshop in the way. Then we have a shared problem, she said, and I do not give away solutions for free. Name your terms. My shop remains. My lease is extended by 10 years, and you tell me the truth about Salzburg. He flinched. It was small, a contraction of the muscles around his eyes, but she saw it. Salzburg, he said. I left because I realized I was becoming dependent on your company. For someone of my nature, dependence is dangerous. For someone of any nature, disappearing without a word is rude. Almost, he smiled. Agreed to all terms. They worked together over the following weeks. Marguerite spent her mornings in the garden, mapping the selenite vein's path through the soil. Her gift allowed her to feel the mineral the way a dowser feels water, a warm pulse beneath the coldness of the drained earth. Anselm Pravaro provided her with old surveys and geological records from his library. One evening, she found him reading a botanical text she had sold from her shop 6 years ago. Her own handwriting was in the margins. Notes on propagation methods. You bought this, she said. I bought everything you published, he said. It was the only way to hear your voice after I left. She counted the books on his shelf. 11, one for each year. She said nothing because some arithmetic speaks for itself. That same night, on impulse, she climbed to the second floor. The dark room drew her. She did not enter. The door was locked. But she placed a candle on the exterior windowsill. She lit it with a match that smelled of sulfur and cedar. The flame reflected in the glass. For the first time in 50 years, light touched that window. She did it again the next night, and the next. Anselm said nothing about the candles, but on the fourth night, she found a small vase of dried lavender beside the windowsill. He had placed it there during the day, when she was gone. The countess struck again on a Thursday. Marguerite arrived at her shop to find a notice from the district tax authority. Her property had been reassessed at triple its previous value. The back taxes owed, calculated retroactively for 3 years, exceeded her entire savings. She had 14 days to pay or face seizure of the property and its contents. 42,000 kreuzer, Marguerite said to Anselm that evening. That is the amount she has conjured from thin air. I can pay it, he said. You will not. This is my shop and my fight. If I accept your money, Dreschler will use it to argue I am your dependent. He will petition to transfer my commercial license to your name. How do you know that? Because there are 9 precedents in Viennese commercial law. I read them all last Tuesday. He regarded her with an expression she could not classify. It sat somewhere between admiration and the ache of recognizing someone who would never need rescuing. Then what do you propose? He said. I propose we find out who on the tax authority board owes favors to the countess. And then I propose we find out what the countess does not want anyone to know. The investigation consumed a week. Marguerite discovered that Countess Vogt had been purchasing properties across Vienna for decades. Always above selenite veins, always through intermediaries, always through Dreschler. 3 of those properties had been seized through fraudulent tax reassessments identical to hers. She compiled the evidence in a ledger. Dates, names, amounts, property records, 63 entries. She counted them twice. But the Countess was not finished. She arrived at Marguerite's shop in person on a cold November afternoon. Renata Vogt was beautiful in the way that polished marble is beautiful. Flawless, cold, and entirely without warmth. Her eyes were the color of old silver. Frau Severin, the Countess said, you have been causing me inconvenience. Countess Vogt, you have been causing me paperwork. I consider that worse. The Countess moved through the shop, touching nothing, examining everything. She paused before the window where Marguerite kept her living specimens. Plants that should not have thrived in October but did, lush and green, fed by the selenite beneath the floor. You have a gift, the Countess said. I could use someone with your abilities. I am not for use. Everyone is for use, Frau Severin. The question is merely the price. The Countess turned. I know what Anselm Valdrick is. I know you are helping him. I know about the garden, the selenite, the candles in the window. If you do not vacate this building within 7 days, I will expose him to the human authorities. A creature surviving on mineral-laced soil and animal blood will not fare well under scrutiny. You would expose your own kind. I would sacrifice one to control nine. Arithmetic, Frau Severin. You appreciate that. 8, Marguerite said. I beg your pardon? 8. If you expose Anselm, the remaining vampires under your potential control number 8, not 9, you lose him entirely. Your leverage decreases by 11%. That is poor strategy. The Countess stared. People did not correct her mathematics. 7 days, the Countess repeated, and left. That night, Marguerite went to the mansion. She climbed to the second floor. The dark room's door was unlocked for the first time. Inside, she found a chamber preserved in amber, furniture from another century, a woman's writing desk, dried flowers in crystal vases. The room of someone who had been loved and lost. Anselm stood in the doorway behind her. Alara, he said. She died in 1817. She was the one who planted the roses. And you kept this room dark because light meant hope, and hope was something you could not bear, Marguerite said. Yes. She lit the candle on the windowsill. From inside this time, the flame painted the room in gold. Shadows retreated from surfaces they had occupied for 50 years. The Countess will expose you in 7 days, she said. I know. I will not let her. Marguerite, I have 63 documented instances of her fraud. I have evidence of forged tax assessments. I have the names of 4 municipal officials she has compromised. What I need is a witness willing to testify that she coerced them. The vampires she controls will not speak against her. She holds their selenite access. Then I need another kind of witness. She looked at him. The candle flame moved between them like a third voice in the conversation. If you testify about what she is, what you both are, the human authorities will investigate. She loses her leverage, but you lose your secret. Yes, he said, that is an unacceptable trade. Then find a better one. You are the one who counts. 3 days before the Countess's deadline, Drechsler appeared at the mansion. Marguerite was in the garden, her hands deep in the soil, feeling for the selenite vein. She heard his voice through the wall. He had come with a document, a deed of transfer. If Anselm signed in the garden and mansion over to the Countess, she would withdraw all actions against Marguerite's shop. I will sign nothing, Anselm said. Then the woman loses her shop, and you lose her, Drechsler said. The Countess knows about Salzburg. She knows you have been purchasing her books for 11 years. Sentiment is a weakness, Lord Valdric. It always has been. Marguerite stepped through the garden door. 16, she said. Drechsler turned. 16 what? 16 criminal charges I can file against you personally. Trespass, fraud, forgery, conspiracy to defraud the tax authority, impersonation of a building commission representative. Shall I continue? I have the complete list in my shop, alphabetized. Drechsler's composure fractured. He looked at Anselm, then at Marguerite, then at the document in his hands. The Countess will not be stopped by a shopkeeper with a ledger, he said. But his voice had lost its architecture. Then the Countess should have chosen a less literate adversary, Marguerite said. After Drechsler left, Anselm turned to her. She will retaliate. I know. That is why I am going to see her tonight. Alone? If you come, she will see it as your fight, not mine. She respects power. I need to show her mine. Your power is botanical. She is a centuries-old vampire. My power is that the selenite responds to my touch and no one else's, Marguerite said. Without me, neither of you can access it sustainably. The vein is dying. You said so yourself. The roses are proof. I am the only person who can restore the selenite flow, and we both know it. He stared at her. In the fading light, his eyes held a depth that ordinary darkness could not explain. You would use that as leverage. I would use it as a fact. Facts are not weapons. They are furniture. They simply occupy the space until someone acknowledges them. He almost smiled. Almost. Be careful. I am always careful. I count everything. The Countess received her in a drawing room paneled in walnut and condescension. The air smelled of cold perfume and old silk. Renata Vogue sat in a chair that might have been a throne in a less subtle century. You wanted to see me, the Countess said. I confess I am curious. I want to propose a trade, Marguerite said. Not a surrender. A trade. You have nothing I want. I have the ability to restore the selenite vein. You have been draining it to consolidate control, but the supply is finite. At your current rate of extraction, the vein will be depleted within 2 years. Then you control nothing. 9 vampires, 8 if you sacrifice Anselm, will have no source of sustenance, including you. The Countess's expression did not change, but her fingers pressed welts into the arm of her chair. You are speculating, the Countess said. I am calculating. 207 days of sustained drainage at the rate indicated by the soil degradation in Lord Valdrec's garden. Extrapolated across all properties you control. The mathematics are in this ledger, if you would like to check them. Marguerite placed the ledger on the table between them. 63 entries, 207 calculations. The Countess did not open it. What do you want? I want my shop. I want the fraudulent tax assessment withdrawn. I want Dreschler's forged documents retracted. And I want a written guarantee, witnessed by the district magistrate, that you will cease all hostile actions against properties along the selenite vein. And in exchange, I will restore the vein sustainably for everyone who depends upon it, including you. You would help me? I would help 9 people survive. You happen to be one of them. The Countess stood. She crossed to the window. For a long moment, she looked out at Vienna's rooftops. And if I refuse? Then the vein dies. Your leverage disappears. And I publish the 63 instances of fraud in the Wiener Zeitung. I have a contact at the editorial desk. He is very interested in municipal corruption. You would destroy yourself in the process. The exposure would ruin your shop. My shop is already ruined if you succeed. I lose nothing by acting. You lose everything by refusing. That is the arithmetic, Countess. The silence stretched. Marguerite counted seconds. 23 before the Countess spoke. I underestimated you, Renata Vogt said. Most people do. It is very convenient. The deal was struck that night, but the Countess added one condition: a public signing, witnessed by the district magistrate and 5 members of the municipal board. She wanted the other vampires to see Marguerite's power. She wanted them to understand that the Selenite's future depended on a human woman with soil under her fingernails and arithmetic in her spine. This suited Marguerite perfectly. The signing took place at the Rat House, in a chamber that smelled of ink and institutional anxiety. Dreschler was present, diminished, standing behind the Countess, like punctuation that had lost its sentence. The magistrate reviewed the documents. 5 board members witnessed. Marguerite signed her name with a pen that weighed almost nothing and changed almost everything. Frau Severin, Dreschler said, attempting to recover some authority, you should know that the Countess's generosity has limits. So does my patience, Marguerite said. Fortunately, it extends precisely far enough to tolerate this ceremony. 31 pages, I counted. The Countess watched her with something that might, in a different century, have been respect. You will begin the restoration immediately? The Countess asked. Tomorrow morning. The vein responds best to sustained contact over weeks. I will work from my shop and from Lord Valdrec's garden simultaneously. And we are to trust a human with our survival. You trusted a human to be your adversary. Trusting one as an ally should be easier. The Countess inclined her head. The gesture carried the weight of concession without the indignity of surrender. Outside the Rat House, the November air tasted of wood smoke and victory. Marguerite stood on the steps and let her hands shake. They had been very patient again. Anselm's carriage waited at the curb. He stepped out when he saw her. It is done, she said. I know. I heard everything. You were not supposed to be here. I was not inside. I was across the street, listening with ears that can hear a heartbeat through limestone. Yours was very steady throughout. I was counting. Counting keeps me steady. They stood on the steps. Between them, the space was full of 11 years, 63 ledger entries, and a candle still burning in a window. Why the candles, he asked. You never explained. Because a room that has been dark for 50 years has forgotten what warmth looks like. And because someone should have lit one decades ago, and because she stopped. She had run out of reasons that were not the real one. Because, he said, because I wanted you to know I was coming back every night. I wanted the light to be there before you were, so you would never wonder. He looked at her the way libraries look at people who understand them, with the relief of finally being read. In Salzburg, he said, I left because I was afraid of needing someone again. And now? Now I am afraid of not needing you, which is considerably worse. It is not worse, she said. It is just different arithmetic. He extended his hand, not to take hers, to offer, palm up, fingers open, a question, not an answer. She took it. His skin was cool. Her hands were warm with soil and victory in the particular heat of someone who has just rearranged the furniture of power. Equal terms, she said. Equal terms, he agreed. They did not kiss on the steps of the Rathaus. That would come later, in the garden, when the first restored rose bloomed pink in December, and the improbability of it made them both laugh at the same time. 6 months afterward, on the first warm evening of spring, Marguerite sat in the second-floor east chamber of the mansion. It was her study now. She had filled it with botanical texts, soil samples, 3 living ferns that had no business surviving indoors, but did anyway because they knew better than to argue with her. The window stood open. No candle burned on the sill tonight. It did not need to. The room was lit from within. 2 oil lamps, a reading light, and the quiet glow of a space that had remembered what it was for. Anselm entered carrying a ledger. He placed it beside her. What is this? She asked. The selenite veins quarterly yield. I thought you would want to count. She opened it. The numbers were precise, written in his impossible handwriting. Production was stable, all 9 vampires sustained. The Countess's properties managed according to the agreement. 144, she said. 144 what? The number of roses currently blooming in your garden. I counted this morning. He sat beside her. Not across from her. Beside. The distinction mattered. It was the geometry of partnership. 144, he repeated. Is that a satisfactory number? It is a perfect square, she said, 12 times 12. I find that unreasonably pleasing. Through the open window, the garden exhaled its green, living breath. Somewhere below, roots drew sustenance from soil that a woman's hands had healed. The numbers balanced, the ledger closed, and the room that had known 50 years of darkness held, in its corners and its lamplight, the particular warmth of a thing that had been empty long enough to understand what fullness meant.